So today you're going to show me how to use Azure Copilot to make my life easier as an administrator.
So yeah, we're going to look at Azure Copilot and how we can use it to make managing your infrastructure a lot easier, a lot more efficient. We can use it to help build things. We can help use it to build dashboards, find out information, and also learn how to do things better in terms of, how do we make things more resilient? How do we make things more secure? And some of the tools and scripting that's available in the platform that we can use. So what I'll do is I'll quickly flip over to a demo, show you some of these things. I'll also show you some of the things it's not so great at. So, I mean, it is still in preview at the moment, and some of the questions it just doesn't understand. So you've got to kind of ask it the questions, right? You've got to be very specific with it. So, yep, we'll flip over quickly to the demo, and then we'll flip back.
Great, off you go.
So here we're going to use Copilot to find some VMs and start them. So we'll start with asking it for a graph query to show me all the machines with an environment tag with a value of development. And let's see what it comes back with. So you can see it's created a graph query there where tag environment equals development, but it's also brought me back everything. So it's not really restricted. It probably didn't fully get my question. So what I'm going to do is I'll tell it to just restrict it to VMs only, so we'll get a proper query. So you've got to check all this stuff as well and be quite specific. And then when that comes back, you'll see it's added the type virtual machines there now, so I can just see my one VM there, which is the one I'm interested. So again, this could work for if you had hundreds in your environment as well. So now let's try an operation with a start option. So it will actually go and find that machine and give you the option to start it. And it'll go and do that for you, provided you've got the permissions to go and do that yourself. And you can see it's now starting and running. So, and next we'll look at how to get a graph of the performance of my VM as well. So show me performance of a CPU of the last 48 hours, for example. And it will give me sort of VM metrics. In this case, it didn't understand my question when I asked it too much. So I've asked it for just to give me some VM metrics. And now I'm going to ask it for add memory and disk. You'll see it's not really able to do that right now. So what it'll do, it'll give you one or the other. And then what you can do is click on the Open Metrics Explorer, and then you can go and add your own further metrics to your graph as well as you need. It does also give you back some information about, what things to look for and what it could mean if you've got high CPU, those kind of things. And give you some stats in a document format as well. Here I've tried to ask for disk write performance issues, so things like I would expect queue length, depth, and those kind of things, but it's just given me write performance and number of gigabytes written to disk and those kind of things.
So one concern I would have with that is how do you make sure it's secure?
Okay, so in terms of the Azure Copilot itself, it uses something called on behalf of, or that's how they phrase it, on behalf of. So it's doing something on behalf of you. So if you can't do anything in something in the platform, then the Copilot can't do it. So let's say you ask it to generate a script to go and delete all your resources. If you don't have the access to go and do that, the Copilot's not going to be able to do that. So it's all this kind of doing in that scenario is creating a script to do something, but it can only see and do what you can see and do. So if you've already got the permissions, it's just another tool to be able to manage that platform with the same permissions.
So give me another example of what I can and can't do. One thing that I used to always have to do is go and start a VM or shut a VM down or delete a VM.
Yeah.
Can I do that with Copilot?
Yeah, so you could ask it, so you could say, can you go and start all the VMs that have got a tag with your name on it, for example. So it'll create a query for you and say owner equals Stephen or whatever. And sometimes you can specify a specific instance as well, but what you should really do is put the full resource ID as well, not just the VM name. So a resource ID is the full, it's kind of like an address, so it's got the subscription ID, resource group, and type, and then the name of that. So you've got to give it the full thing, so it's you can be quite specific, because potentially you could have two machines in different resource groups with the same name, for example. So you've got to be a lot more specific when you're talking about specific instances of whatever it is.
So can I get Copilot to go and look for that resource ID for me? Can I like collate it into an Excel file so I've got all my resource IDs in one file?
Yeah, you could do. Again, if you want a specific one, it probably won't work. But what you'd have to do is say, go and get me all the resources within a specific resource group or something. Then yeah, it'll give you all the resource IDs as well.
So it's like doing query language for you, but it's
Pretty
taking
much,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it is graph queries as well. So you could say, show me all my unused disks, for example. So a lot of people have disks in their environment they're not using, they're actually paying for them. So you could
Yeah.
say, generate me a graph query, and it'll generate that query. You just hit run, and as long as you've got permission to see those things, and it'll come up with the results to show you all those things that are not being used, for example. So that's a good way of saving costs as well.
So that's a great cost optimization tool there. So
Yeah.
you can look at it, go and see for unused resources.
Yeah, you could also then potentially use that query and put it into a dashboard. So it's always there. So you can always go to that dashboard. So if somebody does create something in the future, it will show up in that dashboard, unused disks, unused IP addresses, for example.
And
All
do you do
machines.
that to help manage like your customers' costs? You compile all this into a dashboard so you can easily
Um,
see that
You
information.
can do, yeah. So one of the limitations again is like when you're creating lists, it kind of gives you the top five only. So you could say, show me the most top five expensive resources in this subscription, for example. I've been playing with that query; it's not always had the best results just yet, but in theory, that's one of the things that you can use it for, and that's we're testing that out with some of our customers at the moment.
And it's generating the code behind the scenes so you can use that code, edit
Yep,
it. Yeah,
yep, exactly.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be careful with some of the CLI stuff, or even if you ask for PowerShell, it's not always the most efficient code as well. So you'll say, can you go and create, as in the demo, like, can you go and create me five IP addresses? It'll just give you a script, create 5 lines of create. So you can say, okay, now go and put it in a loop and give me a parameter and stuff. So you do have to be quite specific sometimes, and you'll get a lot better script out of it, and then you can kind of reuse it like that.
But like most tools, the more you use it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give us some examples of how you've started using this, and what are some of the precautions that you use just so you get familiar with the tool.
Good point. So we've started using it in our test tenant at the moment. So we're kind of doing read only type queries. So show me, I don't know, all my unused resources, or show me the most expensive resources, and then we're going to see how we can use that with some of our customers. So we've kind of tested it on customer environments just in read only mode. So just go and get me a list, create a dashboard, and that works quite well. We've not started using it to go and generate scripts to go and execute things in customer environments yet. So we want to make sure we test all that properly first, because you've got to got to make sure those scripts that it provides are correct as well, because you don't want to go around and deleting stuff, because it will let you, because it's going to let you run whatever you've got permissions to run. If you ask it to go and delete stuff, it might give you a bit of a warning, but you'll still let you do it. So you've got to
Yeah.
actually understand what those scripts are doing before you go ahead and do them and test them properly.
So it will generate a set of code for you, but you do need to make sure that
Yeah,
when you run that code, you're sure what's going to happen.
exactly. And you might want to run a few lines at a time. I mean, ideally your users and your administrators wouldn't have access to go and delete stuff anyway, right? So you only your top level administrators, or maybe in some cases not even that. You do everything via DevOps, and that'll be done via service principal as well. So again, if your users who don't know what they're doing have got access to go and delete stuff, the problem is there, not in the Copilot.
Yeah. Okay. So there's obviously a lot of variations in different Copilots at the moment and different costs. So can you explain to me for Copilot for Azure, are there any costs associated with that at the moment?
Not at the moment. It's in preview, so it will come at some point. I mean, it's still, personally, I think it's still in its infancy. There's still some work to be done, as you can probably see in the demo. But there are costs associated with the 365 elements of it. So there is I think it's called Pro. What's it called? I've got it here somewhere. Microsoft. There's a free version, there's a Copilot Pro, and there's a Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is more enterprise grade. It covers more applications. Those are paid versions. I think there's also a version for Dynamics 365, but the Azure one is currently free. It's in preview, but it has got limitations in terms because it uses quite a lot of power and data in the background. You're limited to like 15 questions within a 24-hour period as well. And it's got some chats within each chat. You can start a new question or whatever, and that in that it's kind of keeps the context of what you were asking, so it'll know what you just asked it. So you could say, okay, generate a script that creates some public IP addresses, and then you could say, okay, update the script to add this and that, and it will know which script you're talking about. But when you start a new question, all that context goes away. So that's again to help the back end not use too many resources as well. So that's kind of how it works at the moment. You've got some limitations.
How are you training your team to use this, and what's the uptake like?
So what we're doing is testing out in our test tenant. So we've got our own tenant as well. So a whole Azure tenant where we've got test accounts and test resources. So we're looking at it in there, playing with it in there, building queries, building graph queries, etc. to find information and even generate some scripts. I was particularly struggling to find some documentation on an automation script I was using Graph, MS Graph for user management. I used Copilot to generate that script for me, and after a few tweaks, I've got it working, and I couldn't find any documentation on that anywhere. I did get that working through Copilot, so it was really, really useful in that respect. So yeah, we're just trying it out in our test tenant and see what we can do with it and make our lives easier. And a good example, yesterday we had a whole JSON file, and we wanted to document something from that JSON file, so we didn't want to go in and read it all, so we just asked Copilot, go read this JSON file and put these details, pull out these elements and put it in a table, and it did that, and that was saved us a lot of time.
Well, thanks for that, Mitesh. That was very useful today. I think we've learned a lot about Copilot in Azure. Hopefully the demo has been useful to people, and next time we'll go into a bit more detail about Copilot for Dev. I don't think it'll be me, but it will certainly be someone else from Peruzzi Solutions to be able to show you the ins and outs, where there's strengths and where there's weaknesses, as we've done today for Azure for Copilot.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, Stephen, and yeah, we look forward to that episode coming up soon, maybe in next week or week after. So we'll look to do that and put that up live as well. So, and thanks for everyone who watched. Any questions, give us a shout or drop us a comment. If you anything you want to see, leave a comment below. Thanks very much.
Great.